Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Buffett and Beyond Research Saturday ETF report. And this week we're going over the tech sector because it's been in the news almost all week that it was just outperforming or leading the market higher. And this is June 14th, folks. We're almost halfway through the year. And remember, if you want to live on the beach like Jimmy Buffett once did, you've got to invest even better than Warren Buffett does now. And for those of you who want more of these letters just sent directly to your email box and access to our computer program and a full month free subscription, 4 letters and 3 videos each week, we just need your name and email. Go to the site, buffettandbeyond.com, and it says sign up for the free 30-day subscription. And remember that all of this is based on the book Buffett and Beyond, 2nd edition, published by Wiley Publishing. And folks, we will send you a free PDF copy of our book, Buffett and Beyond, 2nd edition, once you sign up for your full month free subscription. So go ahead and do it. BuffettandBeyond.com. Buffett is spelled with 2 F's and 2 T's. All right, let's talk about something that was in the news that's very, very interesting. The Vanguard Group is stepping back into the future, aiming to use a tactic it had patented decades ago, for which its exclusivity expired in 2023, and that is to create ETF shares from its mutual funds. Whoa, and they thought about it all these years ago. Now, the firm joins dozens of other companies, including larger rival BlackRock, that have petitioned the Securities and Exchange Commission recently to create so-called ETF share classes from their mutual funds. I'm not sure how they intend to do that, but more than 60 companies have sought exemptive relief from the rule that prevents them from doing so. Now, Vanguard's application is its second attempt to create actively managed ETFs from its mutual funds, and its first attempt was way back in 2015. So this is going to be very, very interesting, folks, to see what comes out of this, because sooner or later the Securities and Exchange Commission will get up to date, because usually it's behind the 8 ball most of the time. And if a good plan is submitted to it, then I think it's going to give in, and we're going to see some changes in the ETF area, or we're going to see more or a lot more ETFs out there to choose from, which will make us all very, very dizzy. Now, let us look at the XLK, which is the S&P Group Tech ETF, because on the news all week, or the past couple of weeks, we've been hearing that the tech sector has been leading the market higher. So the market, the S&P 500 are the black lines, and here's the ETF down here in the XLK, and you can see it started way below, right around March or so, or April actually, and then it just started going up and actually beat the S&P up here. So it's up about 1 or 2, well, maybe 2% more than the S&P. But we're going to show you something. If you had the right stocks, then this 2 or 3 or 4% is absolutely nothing. We're going to show you that in a minute. Big surprise coming, folks. And let us look over 5 years in the XLK, and I'm going to show you this chart again, but I have to go through a few more charts before I show you this again. So black line is the S&P over the past 5 years, and this yellowish mustard colored line is the XLK over the past 5 years, up 140% versus the S&P up about 95, 96%. So let's look at 6 years returns. You didn't know that I had this portfolio all the way back in 2019, but that's when I started doing research on all these ETFs, because that's when we were thinking about starting the ETF letter. So we have the S&P 500. So this is 6 years up until the end of 2024. So this is just as of about 5.5 months ago. We have the S&P 500. And if you compounded what the S&P did, you would be up 135%. In other words, if you started with $100, you would now have $235. So that's an increase of 135% over the $100 that you started with. Now, the XLK is up about 275% over that same time. So it's doubling the S&P 500. Now, remember, the chart I just showed you was 5 years. This is 6 years that we're talking about. But what if you had picked the top stocks in the XLK as we do using the clean surplus methodology that we use. You would be up 596%, which is 4.4 times more than the S&P 100. So folks, you could see this in here. But one thing I did want to show you is that these stocks did drop along with the XLK in 2022 more. They both dropped more than the S&P 500. So there's more risk in these, but look at the returns you get. Now let's go back to this chart, and if we go back here and take out this 2019, so we have the past 5 years, so it would be 220, 221, 22, 23, and 24. We take out this big number of 70%. And folks, we hate to do that but there were other times when we had almost 70% here, and 2023 almost a little more than 70%. So if you took this first out, we would be up about 307%. The S&P 500 over the past 5 years is up 82%. So if we now look at this chart, where would our top stocks be? Up 307%. So we're looking way up here, more than double, and 4.4 times more than the S&P. So we'd be up here, all the way up here if you had the top stocks instead of just buying the XLK, and the XLK trounced the S&P 500. So let's come up to date and see what we're doing for this year. Now for this year, the XLK is up 4.3% with the S&P, and this is as of Thursday's close, up 2.8%. So the XLK is almost, about not quite doubling the S&P 500. But look at the stocks in here, up 28.1%. These are our top picks. And we've kept a good part of the stocks. What we added this year was Palantir, Palantir, P-L-A-N-A-T-I-R, up 78.8%. And what in the world does that word mean? Well, it's from the books. Well, there were 4 books actually. The Lord of the Rings. The first book was called The Hobbit, and then you had the trilogy, with 3 books which came after that. And there was a bad wizard in the book called Saruman, and he used the Palantir as a crystal ball in order to see his enemies. So that's where the name comes from. And folks, this stock is just rocking and rolling. And we did an ETF video, or not an ETF, but we did a stock video on this stock about a little bit more than a year ago, and I was praising it because it was a new company, but the net income, or the clean surplus earnings, was raised 3 times in the 3 months the first 3 months of last year. So this stock was on a roll, and it kept getting upgraded. So I did a Saturday letter on this particular company. And boy, oh boy, is it! And we put it in the portfolio at the end of last year, and we just had to, because the net income is projected higher and higher each year. And it's a new company. How long will it keep it up? We don't know. And that's the trouble with some of these new companies. They get to a point where the bigger companies either buy them out, or the bigger companies say too much competition. Let's put a lot of research into what they're doing and crush the company. So we have to be very careful here. But there we are. Supermicro is another company that's new to the portfolio, but we've had it in our portfolio for a couple of years. Not necessarily this one, but in the All-Stars portfolio. So yeah, it's doing very, very well. So folks, we had enough fun for one day, so let's give it a rest. And I'm recording this Friday before the market closed, and it's just a pretty nasty day, at least for the Dow. The other indices are coming back, and you know the troubles that they're having in the Mideast. And I'm surprised the market is doing this good, discounting the Dow. But the rest of the market is doing pretty decent, even though it's down. Pretty decent going into a weekend when there's a war going on in the Middle East. So I'm pretty impressed with this market. So folks, The weekend's here. We've done well with our portfolios. In fact, my test portfolio that I use that has some of those, a good part of those stocks that I just showed you, is doing very, very well for the year and doing well since we started it early last year. So we're making money. Our option writing is doing well. Go out, forget about it, go spend some of it. Take your mind off the market because the market will be here back on Monday. And folks, you stay safe, be with your loved ones, and we'll see you back here in a couple of days.